prices and then therefore can control the influence and the quality of life. Is that your key point there?
More than quality of life, it's just that they can appease masses on the certain basic issues which affects them in their daily life, which they generally take a note of.
Sure, okay.
I just feel that when you say government, there's this sense of feeling of security when you talk about it. I mean, with the kind of news that we've been receiving, that all these capitalist ideas of going all out and allowing industries to be totally free with no restriction, that has gone belly up. If you look at Latin American countries and how they suffered previously when they were linked directly to the US economy, etc., we find that left and center-left governments that are coming to power now have done much more for their people. For example, in Brazil or those countries, they've done really well with governments that take a keen interest in key sectors of their market.
But do they key interest with managing or with reform? That's the key question.
That's a point that I want to bring out. It's not just reforms. They actually get into the business and they control it. If there's no rice and Hugo Chavez says, provide rice, I'll break down the mills and I'll provide rice to the people. I mean, there's that sense of security that comes when you know that the government is going to take care of you.
So today, would you put your money in a nationalized bank or in a private bank?
Yeah, I would definitely put it in a nationalized bank.
You put it in a nationalized bank. Okay, all right, fine.
Ronnie, I must comment on one thing very strongly. You see, this whole US fiasco is talked as if it is a private sector, capitalist society, market failure. It is as much or more failure of a regulation. Government did not regulate CDs and CDSSs. If you go into the details of the kind of trillions of dollars of CDSS which were issued, I mean, there was something that government should have been aware of doing it much earlier. So I think
that's a very fair point.
I also want to bring up one interesting point, which is the move in the reverse direction, which is now the injection of private sector giants, let's say, or people who have done really, really well in the private sector into government. And that's also an interesting way of doing it. For example, this new induction of Nandan Nilenkani into the government sector to try and provide some, support and so on. I think that's a very interesting development, and the United States have been doing it for a period of time, like inducting such people into government. And I think this is a very welcome step and needs to be probably further
applauded in that context. Okay, so we're going to cover two more real main sectors and topics before we kind of wind this up. I think one is going to be infrastructure, and then second is employment, which should be a favorite discussion for everyone here. So just kick off on infrastructure. I know everyone's talked about that this is a priority, and I think power has come up and roads have come up.
Yes, in fact,
I want to first bait everyone here with a key question, that is the Indian consumer also looking to pay for that? I mean, there is a new bridge that's opening up in Mumbai, but the largest discussion seems to be on whether the toll should be 40 rupees, 45 rupees or 50 rupees rather than the half an hour that you're going to save, and maybe more than the 50 rupees that you're going to save on gasoline. Well, you're consuming 400 free cable channels today at 75 rupees, which actually should be at 300 rupees. But when that concept changes, because $5 billion need to be put into the cable industry, everyone has a resistance. So is young India and the consumer also willing to pay for this infrastructural development that will take place in some form or the other? Because the government's not going to foot the full bill. There is going to be a concept of toll. Your power rates are going to go up in that context, and I'd just like to start off with that more than what sectors we need to get into as far as infrastructure is concerned.
When considering the young consumer, whether he is ready to pay for the infrastructure charges, most of the young age is ready to pay for because actually they are into a lot of studies and they know that no pain, no gain will always come into play. So if government needs to develop that sort of an infrastructure, what you would say of a developed country, so a lot of money would be put in. So the young India is ready to pay for it. But when we are discussing infrastructure, we need to consider the government policies also. In the coming budget, the government has offered something like 70,000 crore rupees for revamping the public sector steel plants. And also there are plans to invest something like 35,000 crores to add on something like 5,000 odd megawatt of electricity. But there is no concrete plan being shown out that what would be the plan of action. Because similarly in the budget of 2006 by the same government itself, there was something like an expenditure of 23,000 crore for the steel sector, but there was no action shown out because the total output production was increased by only mere 10 to 12%, whereas they targeted for something like 25%. So again, the thing is for the infrastructure also that accountability factor of the government will always come into
play. Fair point. Next, someone else here. Yeah, go ahead, please.
When it comes to infrastructure, then basically the one point that we need to stress upon is that coming back to this point that is the consumer willing to pay if the prices for power or for the toll charges for using the highway and all. And then basically the prices that are charged can be less, but what is needed is basically you need some impetus given by the government to find out resources which are within our country. India is abundant with natural resources. Now recently when you had Reliance starting production from the Krishna Godavari basin, then there can be thousands of such blocks all over the coast of India. Now if you talk about the natural gas which is supplied to power plants, then obviously it's going to produce cheap power. So you don't actually need to increase the prices for that. So the consumer, when you talk, is he willing to pay for the price? You have certain other alternatives wherein at the same price or maybe even at a cheaper cost, you can provide those same services to the consumer.
Fair point. No, I agree, and I think that's a fair point. Yeah. Somebody else there?
I think basically if you see, the consumer is willing to pay for what he gets. That's the basic ideology, right? For the umpteen number of years, we've paid our taxes, we've done what we had to do. The main thing that everybody is today forgetting about is the defense. I mean, we are spending on IT, we are spending on infrastructure, on etc., etc., etc. At the end of tomorrow, if India is going to be a superpower, super giant, where is our defense? Who will take care of us tomorrow? That's something which we've not really thought about right now.
You want to spend more money on defense?
We need to at least start with something, because defense is something which will not grow in a span of 1 or 2 years. It will take a time.
But can I ask you a question just so that we dissect it? Are you talking about defense as in internal security or defense as in external security? Because that's an important...
We'll have internal security first into place, then we can have external security.
So is your recommendation more on internal security? Because that's what I got a sense from your concept. Yes, you were more with the recent attacks and whatever else.
First bridge the gaps within the country, then probably venture off offshore or outside the country.
All right, okay.
Ronnie, when we talk of paying users paying charges for the infrastructure, I think we can negate the whole discussion or debate by understanding that in India, the Indian power sector is one of the most investment intensive. The kind of inverters and the generators we have in homes in India, the kind of the money people are paying for water filters at their home or for the water tanks, people are already paying that kind of money, and that is huge. Like for a unit of power, like that comes from inverter.
So are you saying therefore that we do have a propensity?
We already do it.
Yes.
We already pay it, and that's higher than if there is an infrastructure provided by government. We are already there. We are already.
So then my question to all of you is, according to you, what is lacking? Why is it that we are slow necessarily in our investments in infrastructure and the green lighting of projects? Where is the slowdown?
I believe it's the will of the government to go at the fast pace and provide infrastructure to everybody.
Mr. Dut, will of the government, you feel, is that?
No, you see, government requires money. They don't have that much of money. And generally the development in all developed countries has taken place by foreign investments. And those foreign investments were coming in last 5 years. But now it is stopped. Again the foreign inflow will start. With some foreign inflow, from some equity, some government money, all infrastructure development has taken place across the globe. Mr. Kata, would you like to add in this?
I would completely agree. Again, as we were talking about a little earlier, I think infrastructure needs a catalyst. That's policy. And if the government is going to do this single-handedly with its own money, I think it will find it very difficult. If they create the right policy and the right framework, private sector with international capital will come into infrastructure.
So then what, according to us, is the gridlock?
The gridlock is, again, as I was saying earlier, proper planning. You develop a port, but you don't put a railhead. So you do one aspect of the infrastructure, you spend money. Will the consumer pay? No, because the goods are not reaching in time. It's got to be thought end to end.
And that's the overall mandate from that point of view. So I think the clear voice here seems to be that obviously there needs to be an infrastructure. The consumer is willing to pay for what it would overall get. I think everyone is also quite clear that only the government's onus is not to make all the investments, but they are the triggering process. And I think the bottleneck requires total overall mandate and planning. And if this government in this 5 years can't do it, I don't think we'll ever get past that one. Last comment on that.
Sir, in recent times, there's a lot of importance given to infrastructure as a means to generate employment. But don't you think harping too much on that factor will lead to a situation suggested by, if I'm not making a mistake, John Maynard Keynes, where he suggested to mobilize the economy, you employ 10 people to dig a ditch and then other 10 people to fill it up. So that way there's infrastructure and that generates employment too.
Except in India, we've already got the ditch and now we only need to fill it up from that point of view. So I don't think anyone's here in India fooling themselves that we need to dig a ditch to actually go fix it. So I think we already have our own set of problems and we're here in infrastructure to create that. So last key issue here in terms of employment and employment opportunities.